Hi everyone, been a little while since I last posted something on YouTube. Well, just a quick update. I've been having a few, actually nearly 2 weeks now, where things have been really good. I've been walking normally. I took the dog out for an hour's walk this morning. I did 2 hour walks, 2 separate hour walks like yesterday with him, and I'm getting on very well. Excuse me. The thing is I think, although I'm probably jumping the gun and I should wait until I see the doctor really before making this video, but I think that I might have actually found the answer to all of my health problems, or at least the ones that I've been making videos about for the last few years. And I've always said that the ME thing has, I've never been 100% sure because there were certain things that didn't really fit. Like I've never ever been bedbound, not once, and I think nearly everyone I've spoken to who has had ME have had times at least where they've had to spend, a few days in bed. Never have had. And a lot of people talk about a ragdoll-like weakness. Again, that's never been my problem. It's been stiffness. Anyhow, a couple of weeks ago, well, just preceding all of this, I had to go and see my doctor because I was having pain in my shoulder, down through my arm, my hand, my hips, my thighs, and my right the way down one side, basically in different parts. I could actually feel where the muscles were knotting up, and he diagnosed my fascial pain and obviously put me on some painkillers. But it got me thinking, because I somewhere in the back of my mind I remembered that my fascial pain is connected quite often to hypermobility. And I knew as a child, I have hypermobile joints. I used to see a consultant on a regular basis as a child up until I was probably nearly in my teens, because particularly my legs were bad. From a young age I was always falling over. I was particularly clumsy. I could do strange things with my body, like suck my toe, my arms bend in a funny way, I can bend my ankles in a funny way, all these things. But they were things that I really never thought about, and they were things that happened as a child, and it's things that I've sort of learnt to live with. But then I started to find out a bit more about hypermobility syndrome, and found out actually there was an awful lot of other things that people with hypermobility syndrome, and I can't remember the actual the other name for it, but it's EDS. I can't think of it off the time. It's a strange name, but anyhow, there are a lot of other symptoms. Many overlap with ME type symptoms, including POTS, having brain fog, and many other things. And so this sort of started to make me wonder. But the other thing is that I happened to be looking at some videos on posture, and this guy was showing how if you have bad posture, because posture is particularly important if you have hypermobility syndrome. And this guy was saying about if you have bad posture, how much, like if you have your arms forward and that, it restricts your movement and this sort of thing. And I remember that the only thing that showed up in my MRI was the spondylosis, cervical spondylosis, and I was told it's nothing. You were in your mid-40s at the time I was, and most people of that age start to have some type of problem with their spine, and it wouldn't matter. But I having watched this, I found that if I put my shoulders back, my head back and my shoulders back, I can move freely without any problem. If I happen to slouch, not only can I not move my big movements, but even my small movements become stiff. And then I started thinking, well, what about my walking? And sure enough, if I stand upright, I can walk normally. If I start to slouch, or if I turn my head to look over my shoulders, it's like turning a brake on and everything just goes. In fact, a couple of times when I've been out on a walk, fortunately I still take my stick, and I've heard something behind and I've turned round and I've nearly gone over because obviously I've got momentum. It's a bit like putting brakes on the car and it's suddenly stopping. So this is all looking very interesting. The other thing about hypermobility syndrome is some of the things do not show up on scans. Apparently, because it's to do with connective tissue, if you're lying flat, things can look normal. But because the vertebrae and other parts can be flexible when you're standing or sitting or whatever, or you've got any movement, there can be more flexibility. So if you've got something like spondylosis, there's a good chance that it will move, although it'll show as not encroaching on the spine at all on a scan. When you're standing up, it can actually come into an effect and cause problems. And it explains things like I've often said. It's like the signals aren't getting through, and that's how it is. And I started looking at a few of the videos I've made of me walking normally and of me walking badly, and I could actually see that when I've been walking well, I've had good posture. When I've been walking badly, I've had bad posture. But I've never recognised it. I can't quite fathom why I've missed this all these years, why it hasn't really clicked. So anyhow, the next step for me, of course, is to take some of this information to my doctor and to try to get him to look at this objectively. Fortunately, there's a doctor in London who specialises in hypermobility syndrome. So I'm going to ask to see him. But there are other things that, again, hadn't clicked into place until I started going down this particular route. Like in my 30s, I had problems with my finger would just suddenly go like that. I used to, it would like snap shut. I had a job where I had to use a trigger. I was doing carpet cleaning and you had a trigger. And after a year or so, it might have even been less than that, the joint went and I had to have a repair. I had problems with my knees and I had to have something done to it. I turned over and one of the bones, this was actually after I became ill, I turned over and one of the bones, I can't think of the name of it now, but it's part of the pelvis that connects to the backbone, came out a bit, and I had to have the doctor had to push it back into place. So there are these things that have been there and I've sort of missed. In fact, that particular problem might even explain the lower back pain, kidney pain that I've had for the last 4 years. Sometimes, usually just a dull ache, but sometimes quite severe. Usually worse if I'm sitting in a car for a long time. It might very well have been that's what's been causing the pain. But of course they did the usual urine tests, the blood tests, the kidneys came back showing clear, the liver came back showing clear. Therefore it was all in the head. And all the time it could be something structural rather than anything else, due to the fact that I have got lax joints, hypermobile joints. So the mystery could be being solved. The big job now is to try to get my doctor to listen. If this doctor who deals with hypermobility knows that POTS is a particular problem for people with hypermobility, he is almost certain to get me tested, which if I have ME, no one's interested. So it is in some ways it's positive, because I know I have, in my own mind at least at the moment, I know what is wrong, and it's well written in my medical records. They might have to dig 40 years back to find it, but it's there in my medical records. It's just a shame that I or no one else even thought to try to put this together. And I wonder how many other people who have a diagnosis of ME and or fibromyalgia actually have hypermobility syndrome. In fact, I have read that quite a high percentage are initially diagnosed with either ME or fibromyalgia who actually have hypermobility syndrome. It's a common misdiagnosis, and that's the problem with the whole thing of the CFS in particular, is that it's a basket, it's a wastebasket diagnosis that they chuck everyone in that they can't find an answer for. There are still things about the way it all started for me which still don't make sense, and I can't quite add together. And as I say, I might be fooling myself, and I might go to the doctors and I might have real problems, although I can see, fortunately, this professor will see people privately without a referral, which is good. So if I need to, I can go privately. But it's all very interesting, and at the moment I'm enjoying far more freedom in terms of my mobility. I just have to watch my posture. My posture goes, my walking goes. My posture goes and I start jumping. Even that, I noticed, if I keep my posture right, I don't have my involuntary movements. If I allow myself to do this for too long, then I start to have problems. So anyhow, I will catch up with you when I finally plucked up the courage to see my doctor and let you know exactly what he says. This is probably too premature, and I probably shouldn't have made this video for at least a week until I've seen him, but it's just so exciting that the puzzle seems to be falling into place in a way that I've not seen in the whole of these 5 years. So bye for now, I've spoken too long.